Hello, and welcome to Women in Business, where we interview entrepreneurs and senior managers and show you the strengths, successes, obstacles, and roadblocks women experience in business. Since I believe every person in business needs to be visible, I'd like to invite you to watch www.sob6, that's the number 6, tips.com, which will give you some valuable information should you get the call to be on radio or TV, which I think is extremely important. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at Gail Carson, that's Gayle, GailCarson13 at gmail.com, or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter.
A really interesting guest that I have today is Marcia Daszko. She is someone who, for more than 25 years, has been passionately speaking on consulting and guiding executive teams in Fortune 500 and private corporations, education, the U.S. Navy, and nonprofits to achieve exponential success. Mentored by Dr. W. Edwards Deming, which I don't know how many of you remember Dr. Deming, but he was really the originator of the whole quality circles and quality information. And I think sometimes those people get forgotten in our world that we're living in. But she was mentored by him, which is quite an honor. And she's nominated for the International Deming Prize. She writes a leadership column for the Silicon Valley Business Journal and has taught MBA classes at 6 universities. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on your show.
What was it like being mentored by Dr. Deming?
Honestly, in the very beginning, I was so excruciatingly shy that it was terrifying. And because he was such a big figure, and thousands of people would attend his 4-day seminars. And I worked for a consulting company at the time owned by Dr. Perry Gluckman, who was a good friend of Dr. Deming, and he sent me to learn about Dr. Deming's philosophy of management. And I was initially so overwhelmed because the words he was even using, I was not familiar with, like systems and variation. And it was just amazing transformation. So I had a lot of learning to do, and I ended up studying under both of them, Perry and Dr. Deming, and for the next 4 or 5 years, and I felt like I went through a PhD program. It was very intense, a tremendous amount of learning. I attended 20 of Dr. Deming's 4-day seminars, and then was a co-founder of the Bay Area Deming User Group, and we met monthly to discuss his philosophy and how to apply it. And we met monthly for over 16 years.
Wow, that was quite an experience. He was quite a gentleman.
Yes.
So we've heard a little bit of your story and background. So what are some of the significant turning points in your life that brought you to where you are today?
So definitely, in my insides, I'm a natural teacher, and I love giving and helping others, especially when they're having a struggle. My mom says I give too much, but it's where my heart is. I just am really happy when I'm in that giving mode. So if I can help people through struggles, get out of a crisis, or achieve new opportunities, chase opportunities, and visionaries see possibilities. So I've worked with both people who struggle and people who are at a certain point, maybe they're doing fine with their organizations, but they see so much more potential. And I love to work with them because then it's like they are able to, it's pivotal leadership, the ability of leaders to pivot, adapt, as our world is disrupting around them, or they are disrupting the world, it's essential. It's all about survival. It's accelerating, it's scaling, it's meeting big needs that sometimes we don't even know that we have. It's like, why do people stand in line for iPhones? Did we ever knew that we needed a fax machine, and so forth? So the turning points were really meeting Dr. Deming, my personal transformation. So when I met him, my son was about 5 or 6 years old and starting school, and I thought he would go through school like I did, with the gold stars and the grades and so forth. And Dr. Deming taught me that those are forces of destruction, and over time they will diminish children's natural love of learning. So I was able, with this new thinking, to influence my son's school and kept grades out of his elementary school. Instead, they focused on the joy of learning. And I do the same thing when I teach MBA classes. We move the grade aside, and then I ask the students, so what, if we're not going to focus on getting a grade, getting that A, what should we focus on? And one of the managers, a lot of them are mid-level managers, spoke up and shyly said, learning? And I said, wow, what a concept. Let's focus on learning. Yes, let's do that.
Wow. So what were the principles that you helped leaders learn to help them transform? I mean, let's talk about the leaders then in business. How are they different from others?
Sadly, so many leaders, executives, business owners, nonprofit leaders across all sectors, leaders grab onto, and it's not their fault. They didn't learn this in school. And my students even ask, Marcia, why didn't we learn this before? Like we're in our last class of our MBA program, we're just now learning this. And I can only shrug my shoulders. I'm not the Secretary of Education, but give me a chance. But the thing is that the principles are not generally taught, and what they are, as Dr. Deming, taught me as well, and other people like Dr. Russ Akoff, what leaders need to understand is not management fads, not quote unquote best practices. These things come into their organizations and then they start struggling and they deteriorate and they sometimes fail from the inside out. They think it's the external that makes them fail, but it's not. It's generally it's internally first, because they can't handle the challenges. They can't pursue the opportunities. And so that's why I wrote my book, because I say these are the things. There are 3 sections, and the first section is these are the things you need to stop doing. All those management fads and best practices that we have in organizations, and instead shift to what they need to start thinking, part 2, and part 3, how to transform. And that's based on the principles that Dr. Deming taught, such as systems thinking, statistical thinking. How do we look at data over time to make decisions? Not looking at a single data point this year, comparing it to the same month last year. That is totally incorrect. We need to look at data over time and chart it. And then, so basically systems and statistical thinking plus theory of psychology. What do they know about people? Leaders think that they motivate people. That is the wrong approach. Instead, leaders need to create an environment where people are self-motivated. That is where the power is, in the self-motivation, not leaders or managers trying to motivate their teams. That's the wrong approach. And that's such different thinking. And then the 4th part is about a planning. That it's basically theory of knowledge. How do you plan implement your plan, study what worked and didn't work, and then apply what works and throw out what doesn't, and keep doing that over and over. It's called a PDSA cycle: plan, do, study, act. And that is a very powerful tool for executives, managers, teams, staff across any sector.
So your book, which is called Pivot, Disrupt, Transform, tell us what makes that so different from the other books that are out there now about all of that.
Okay. The difference is, and although I was an English major and can write and so forth, I didn't plan to really write a book. But when I couldn't find a book that had the concepts in it, then that's why I wrote my book. And because I see so many people struggling that don't need to struggle. If they even, grab the book and even read the first 30 pages, they're going to learn so much about what they need to stop doing. And that's why the book is so different. Like Ken Blanchard and Daniel Pink, a friend of mine, Vice Admiral Kevin Green, Army Colonel Deborah Lewis, they all read the manuscript, and they gave me phenomenal testimonials on the book, because they said, wow, this is not how leaders think. This is not what leaders do. This is really contrarian thinking, and it's exactly what we need. It's what, like Dan Pink said, that I'll shake up their thinking about what it takes to be a leader. And Ken Blanchard said something very similar. He said, this book is a life changer for organizations everywhere. And I wrote it because people don't challenge the beliefs and assumptions and systems that they are working in. They don't ask enough questions. They assume that it's the right thing to do. For example, if a company starts up and once it has 20 or 50 employees, and HR comes in and says, oh, now we need to do performance appraisals and set arbitrary numerical goals and have performance goals for the individuals. That is common practice. A new leadership team, a CEO, a founder wouldn't probably think twice about not doing that, because that's the system that they grew up in. But they need to challenge all of that. Those practices are so toxic and create dysfunctional cultures. They create internal competition. Oftentimes when I'm working with an executive team, maybe we're at an offsite meeting and I ask them what their values are, and they say, oh, collaboration and cooperation and teamwork and all these things. And then I ask them, do you have performance appraisals that rank and rate your people? And they say, oh, yes, of course. And I say, why? And they cannot answer the question. I said, why do you say your values are these things, but your practices, your actions, your systems that you have brought into this beautiful company that's on the way to growth, those are all the things that will build in internal competition and create a lot of struggle and anxiety for you for the future. Why do that?
Wow. Yeah, that's most people are not thinking analytically right now. They're kind of reacting rather than proacting. And I know a friend of mine did a survey of 100 CEOs it was about 4 or 5 months ago, so it was a little bit different, but they were not planning further than 4 weeks ahead because they didn't know what was happening. So why do you think your messages in particular significantly help people? In other words, what is it that you're doing that's so different?
I teach my clients that a theoretical foundation of management and leadership, so that when the challenges, the crises come up for them, it's like, remember when the pilot Sully had to put the plane down in the Hudson River some years
ago? I sure do.
Yes. So he couldn't gather in a meeting and say, okay, let's brainstorm ideas about what we should do here. He had to rely on his education, his training, the same that a surgeon would do, going in with a trauma patient that was just out of a car accident. So I create the same thing with leadership teams, so that whether they're in a crisis or they are anticipating huge growth, like Zoom had to respond to exponential growth with its customers, very quickly, because all of a sudden everybody had to go virtual. And if they chose the Zoom platform, boom, they just probably, exponentially grew times 100 or something. So the point is that the leadership teams I teach, I give them that foundation, so that when a crisis hits, when a challenge or an opportunity knocks on their door, or they see something that they could create a new product, service, or market, they are ready to go after it. They can accelerate. They can sense and respond faster, and therefore survive faster than other organizations. I had clients and friends who are executives. They had a pandemic plan. They had anticipated years ago, what if this ever happens? So they grab their plan, and they don't have to go through all the thinking. Then they can have the discussion and adapt and become more resilient, because they thought about it in calmer times. And other people, if they at least have that foundation, they can immediately go into their, plan, do, study, act mode. They can, and they have anticipated. And that is such a powerful word that can help them then pivot and adapt and transform. Great leaders, it's just, we've heard the word pivot so much last year and this year. And the great leaders are always pivoting. Pivotal leadership is the path to the future. It's the path to creating new customers, new markets, new products and services. Pivotal leadership is about seeing the landscape and being creative and innovative. I've said often through the last 10, 11 months that the people who are the most creative will be the most resilient through this crisis and any crisis. The more creative they can be, the more sound their foundation is, where they're coming from a foundation of leadership because they've studied it, over time in the past. My clients were able to very quickly pivot, prepare, get their, employees out of the offices and onto their virtual platforms and so forth. And they could do that because while it was stressful, they could naturally pull from their knowledge and respond with knowledge, not just being reactive.
Well, in the case of, the Hudson River downing of the plane, that was really his background and his experience and his ability, especially because he is also a glider pilot. So it really, all of his experience helped him do what he had to do. And I mean, it was miraculous. It was wonderful.
Yes.
So, what are the qualities that you look for in people who will boldly make a difference?
There are oftentimes people talk about leadership qualities, and many times, those are great. They're helpful, but at the foundation level, when I'm working with people, I look for two things. One is openness to learning, continually learning, lifelong learning, asking questions, and listening. Leaders really, and I've seen some amazing executives do this. One of my friends, an executive at Boeing, one time invited me into a management team meeting, and seemed like there were 20 people around the table. And he talked for a couple of minutes, and then he asked a question, and he opened it up. He didn't say a word for about an hour, and then he asked he said a few more things, asked another question, and off they went again in this really robust discussion. And so I think that I witnessed awesome leadership that day, because he guided them to where he had the vision of where he wanted them to go, but he wanted them to have the discussion and the ownership and the conversation to get there. So openness to learning and listening is number one, and number two is courage. It takes deep learning and deep study, and I think all great leaders, great executives have a coach who has knowledge, not just the fly-by-night management fads that we hear about out there, but they have a great coach who has knowledge. That's the profound thing that Dr. Deming said. They have to have profound knowledge, that systems thinking and so forth. So the second thing being courage is, when you have this knowledge, it's one thing to be like book smart or have a lot of degrees, or even have what Dr. Deming taught, that knowledge. But then it's one thing to have it in your head, that's the intellectual, but then you have to believe it, that's the emotional. And number three is the behavioral. Do you have the courage to apply it? So it's those three things that leaders have to have: the focus on learning, and asking questions, the focus on having the courage to take that learning, apply it, and make a difference in their organization, to people, so that individuals can personally transform, the organization can transform, and you make an impact on society. So it goes, beyond just your own team, your own company, your own nonprofit. It goes beyond to how do we impact society and make a difference.
So what are you most excited about for 2021? We're just starting the year, and, what are you most excited about?
Sometimes I think hope, but hope is not a strategy. So I'm excited about people opening up to see more and more opportunities and seeing so many different ways to think and do business. So all of the pivots that we were thrown into last year, many of those will extend into 2021 through 2021 and beyond. So, for example, some of the companies pivoted.
Well, I'm going to cut you off there because we only have 2 minutes left, and I want people to know how to get in touch with you. So what's the best way to reach you?
Okay. My email is md@mdaszko.com. Phone number is 408-398-7220. And go to my website. Through there, you can also reach me. And it's mdaszko.com. and or go to if the name of my the spelling of my last name is
spelling of your name. It's
yes.
Daszko.
Yes.
So if you go to Marcia, which is spelled Marcia Daszko Daszko, you will find her.
Yes.
And again, her phone number is 408-398-7220. So if any of the things that Marcia has talked about interest you, if you want to learn about data and analyzation and how to measure how you're doing and what's the best way to approach it, she's the one that can help you because that's her background. And remember, she studied with Dr. Deming, and he was the best. So we really appreciate that. And for those of you who are listening to me now, I'm going to invite you to go to my spunkyoldbroad.com website. There you can find coffee cups. I want you to have coffee or tea with me in the morning. I have Facebook Lives. I have a virtual SOB club. I have my SOB University, which is the, where you can find my programs. And you can also go to YouTube, Spunky Old Broad, and find things there. So lots of ways to find me, lots of ways to find Marcia. Thank you so much for being with us today, Marcia.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope people enjoy my book, Pivot, Disrupt, Transform, which is on Amazon as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you.